most of my listeners, I think, are not just in my head. I think I have the metrics to prove it. You've taken a leap of faith today. What is that sound? And I apologize if you take offense. I'm a little offended myself. Welcome to our show. Welcome to the future. What it is, joining you live from sunny California. It's a beautiful day today. I'm your host, Nathan Stoltman. And I bring you the news, the real news. That's right. And today I bring you even realer news than usual. I am so excited today to bring you my guest, Ed Opperman, and I'm going to ask him why on earth he agreed to be on my show and why on earth he's going to give me some exclusive information from what I understand. I'm given a little time here of an intro to let people tune in. Hopefully people were planning to tune in because we've been hyping this up for a few episodes now. We looked into the McMartin preschool case, first of all, yesterday, which was a big case during the 80s, which involved satanic ritual abuse, allegedly, which at one point was more than 1,000 children implicated, or who came up forward as possible victims of this abuse. And eventually it became one of the most expensive trials in U.S. history. And the claims ended up being theoretically debunked. And that's the official story. Meanwhile, Ted Gunderson looked into that and said there were tunnels under the schools. Anyway, I'm telling you about McMartin. I'm telling you about that particular case. We talked about it yesterday because I understand Ed has some information on that I don't think has previously been revealed. So we'll let him talk about that. Ed is a private investigator who operates his own website at OppermanReport.com. OppermanReport.com is his website. This is Ed here. Ed is going to be appearing by voice, as he normally does. He has a YouTube channel, Ed Opperman. Here, let me pull that up for you. Right here, where you can find his podcasts as well. And he interviews, he has a kind of a smorgasbord of different shows and different people he interviews, but ends up in some cases in the same line of thinking I am. Particularly, we respect him for going after child sexual abuse, which almost nobody is willing to do. He's willing to interview people like David Schroeder and give a real legitimate platform for discussing what's really going on as far as elite pedophilia and even going to the White House. In this case, we are also going to be talking about Donald Trump and his connections to Epstein and elite pedophilia at large. The Opperman Report also is available as a podcast. You can listen to it on iTunes. And the same way you can listen to this, actually. And he also has a premium section of his website. We'll talk about that. He really has, I read stuff off the internet, and then report it to you. Ed does real research. He's a real private investigator, calls people up and gets the actual facts. So we're going to talk about that with him. That's the difference between this show and a regular show you watch on this channel. This one has real facts, not just stuff your host reads off the internet. So one of the things we're going to talk about, and I believe is going to be debunked a little bit, is that Donald Trump and Donald Trump's White House has somehow been responsible for some massive pedophilia sweep, that they've made, in some cases, reports of up to 1,500 arrests since Trump took office at the end of January. So we're going to look at some of those claims and how they were made. And part of the reason for this is Ed and I both have a thing with phonies in the media or representing inside sources This media that is Trump leaning and in some cases seems to be distracting perhaps from the real issues. We might even agree on characters like George Webb, from what I can tell. So we might talk about that. But part of the narrative since Trump took office is that he's been going on some unprecedented bust of child pornography, child trafficking, etc. So I'm going to look at some of the reporting on that just to give you some background before Ed comes on. And like I said, to just build up a little bit of the audience before the interview gets started, because I want you guys to hear the whole thing. This particular story, came out earlier this year. Ed tells me the first place it was reported was this Liz Crokin on townhall.com. And the headline asks why the MSM is, it doesn't ask, it says why the MSM is ignoring Trump's sex trafficking busts. And goes on to say there have been a staggering 1,500 plus arrests in one short month. In one short month, right, between the end of January and the end of February, that's when this was being reported. Compare that to less than 400 sex trafficking related arrests in 2014. So the idea here is that Trump is going after pedophiles and the quote unquote deep state, I suppose, the Hillary wing of the child molesters, allegedly, are the ones trying to smear Trump and while trying to hide the fact that Trump is really going after the pedophilia and in the end is going to bring down the elite pedophile rings run on the Hillary Clinton side of the coin, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama side of the coin, as if that's going to happen. I'm just going to, let me give you some background on that. One of the things mentioned, as this part of this number, this 1,500, was this task force that was put together in LA, and it happened to do a big operation called Arrest and Rescue. Operation Reclaim and Rebuild. Now, this happened to be a planned operation for January 26th and January 28th. And it was set up well in advance. The task force was around for about 3 years before this happened. And it just coincidentally happened after Trump took office, had nothing to do with Donald Trump. And seems like a bit of a PR move in and of itself. They busted kind of surface level establishments, massage parlor, etc. Although they do say, here are the numbers. Operation Reclaim and Rebuild was widely successful in its endeavor, with 28 commercially sexually exploited children and 27 adult victims being recovered, 142 males arrested for the charge of solicitation, and 36 males arrested for pimping. In total, 474 arrests were made. Nothing as far as rings, nothing as far as an underground operation. Again, more kind of surface level stuff, and again, all planned in advance, having nothing to do with Donald Trump. Let me just play you the way that was spun, and then we'll bring Ed on right away. So this is how InfoWars was talking about it. This is how InfoWars was talking about it just recently, it looks like. So again, here's Owen Schroyer, InfoWars.
Of course, the big one that really kind of busted everything open was the story that was broke by KTLA5 in Los Angeles. Huge story. Still to this day, I've yet to see any mainstream television news cover it. 474 arrested, 28 sexually exploited children rescued. This is massive. And I know that this is old news, but this is still big. So there you go, just a string of arrests when it comes to child pornography and pedophilia, folks. Disgusting. But these arrests are happening, and happening in quite a sweeping string of events, if you will. that you would think maybe you find a loose thread, maybe somebody sings, maybe you bring down something bigger. Again, 474 arrested, 28 sexually exploited children. That's just about as big as it gets, folks, but you'd be surprised. I think we're going to find more as these stories continue to break. But look at the fraud.
So there you go. And then he's going to go into why the Democrats are the ones responsible, basically. Okay, did I give you enough of an introduction, everybody? I'm going to welcome on Ed Opperman. I'm going to welcome Ed to take himself off mute and introduce himself to everybody. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Nathan. How are you? Thank you so much.
I'm great. I'm really excited to have you here.
Oh, great. Very, very good. Yeah, I recognize your intro. I've listened to your show before.
You did? You have?
Yeah.
What? I was wondering. You agreed to be on the show, and I was surprised. And then you were giving me all this information. Had you really seen the show before?
I have. I know for a fact because we cover a lot of the same topics. I'm sure. So I know for a fact I've listened to that intro before. Maybe I turned off after the intro was right. I don't think so. Though. No, I think I recall having good memories there.
I think you just don't want to admit that you're a fan of the show.
Oh, there you go.
You didn't see it when I had David Schroeder on?
No, I didn't catch David Schroeder. I haven't talked to David Schroeder in quite a while. I used to give him a show. I gave him a show on Awake Radio, and we haven't talked since. So
Yeah. He mentioned. He said, "Well, I can imagine he's a bit of a loose cannon, probably." He said he started talking about some sensitive stuff, and you ended the show with him.
No, that's not how it went at all. He just stopped playing the show one day. I never ended anything.
Oh, he did. Oh.
You know,
it's always a different story.
Yeah.
But David's cool. I had a nice talk with him, and he's maybe gonna hook me up with Fiona Barnett. Have you interviewed Fiona yet?
I've interviewed Fiona, and I gave her a show on Awake too, and she canceled the show right after David did.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm gonna try to get. David said he's still buddies with Fiona, so
Okay.
I'm gonna try to get her on my show if I can. Well, since I opened the show with it, and you mentioned you want to talk about it, let's talk about those arrests, huh? What's your angle on that?
Well, yeah. Well, even like you said, even in that quote from InfoWars, a reliable source if I ever heard one, they mentioned that 28 kids were rescued, right? But when you listen to the actual, because there's I sent you the police press release, and the phone numbers of the cops are on it. You can call up the cops. But there's a YouTube video of their press conference, and the way they word it is any children we came across, any children we encountered during this investigation were taken into custody of Child Protective Services. So it's not even that these were children. We don't know if these were children who were being molested or at-risk children, just that they were there at the scene of prostitution or some kind of arrest or something went on, and these kids were encountered by the police during the arrest. But this idea started by Miss Crokin, Liz Crokin, that there was this, huge, as soon as Trump came into office in Sessions, there was this huge sweep of pedophiles, and he's working tirelessly to uncover these rings and all this kind of stuff. There is absolutely no evidence to indicate that whatsoever. And by the way, too, someone listened to my show. I did talk about this on the show, and someone tweeted me and Crokin, and her response was, well, Ed must be a controlled opposition. I see you, and then MAGA, make America great again. So I replied back, make it up as you go along, MAGA.
Yeah, you mentioned, I was listening to that episode because you were talking about some stuff that I bet you'll be talking about on this one too. Being called controlled opposition is nothing new to me either. Yeah, if you look around, and when I was covering George Webb, that's why I was wondering if you were watching my show. I was saying this guy who ended up saying he was his brother was really the same person, and they was playing multiple roles. Anyway, so I was listening to what you were saying on there, and you have some opinion about these people that are Trump supporters that are somehow involved, right, in covering this stuff up. We're kind of on a similar page there. Is that accurate?
No, I'm not clear. Covering what stuff up?
The Trump, the elite pedophilia, that a lot of this stuff is a distraction. For example, like some of the stuff George Webb was talking about, you thought might be a distraction away from bigger stuff. And then these surface level pedophile arrests being presented as if it's progress towards the larger thing. And then some of these people, like this MAGA person who wrote you, calling you controlled opposition, most likely she's something like that herself. Right?
Yeah, that was Crokin herself who wrote that.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know. I kind of feel that some of these people, it's just wishful thinking. You know what I mean? Like, we all wish, man, that something would happen, that someone would come in and rescue us. You know, we see what's going on with these people like Epstein and these high-level pedophile rings. What's his name? The guy, Jimmy Savile. You know, all this stuff we know is going on. The Pizzagate stuff, you know, that even if 5% of that's correct and accurate, and I've interviewed first-hand witnesses off the air. I have witness statements from people involved in it. That if even 5% of all this is real, we're hoping and praying that someone's going to come and march into the rescue. You know, like Trump, wouldn't it be great? But you can't just ignore all the facts and Trump's whole life history and everything we know about the man and just say that, well, no, it's not what we know, it's what we hope. So I don't know if it's controlled opposition or they're just wishful thinking or they're just right-wing kind of racist kind of folks. We saw what happened on Sunday, you know. I see a lot of people defending that. Who I formerly respected, so I don't know. As far as a character like this Webb guy, you know, I don't even want my name associated with him. I don't know what he's. The thing about the brother, I heard something about the brother who outed him, and I never heard that the brother's the same guy as him, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. This guy was trying to contact me months and months and months ago, trying to get me to play some video or interview or what. I don't know what he wanted. And he was sending these people fake accounts to me, and it was so annoying. I blocked like 5 or 6 accounts. I don't know if there were different people or accounts or what. But I've seen nothing of any value come out of this character whatsoever. Not even close.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a lot of things there that we're going to talk about. I had a whole thing with him, and you mentioned the multiple accounts that contact you and stuff.
Yeah.
I think he was directly involved in, well, he or his brother, if they're different people than his brother, was involved in this gang stalking of me and pretty much making me almost insane. And then they shut down my channel too with the same kind of crowd stalking and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, they're dangerous people, and they're doing something. They're up to something too. You know, that's why I mentioned it. You mentioned, well, you did tell me, so you brought up Pizzagate. Yeah. You told me that you took those witness statements off the air. Do you want to divulge anything that you found that you know about Pizzagate? I've said Pizzagate was a psyop because it was promoted, and there must have been some part of the story that they were using to distract from something else, because these controlled opposition agents were all pushing Pizzagate, you know, and the rally and stuff in D.C. was disinfo. What's real in Pizzagate, and what's your opinion on it?
Well, I was the first actual, besides YouTube, you know, I was the first actual radio show to cover Pizzagate, and this is way back in the Reddit days, you know, and they were all doing backflips when they heard that I was talking about it, you know, and there were a bunch of Trump supporters in there that were behind Pizzagate. I spoke to, and it's on the air. You can find the interview on the air with Ryan O'Neal, who was the gentleman who found the kill room. Are you familiar with that whole story?
Well, I'm familiar with. I was going to look up your interview with Ryan O'Neal just to show it to people. Yeah. I'm familiar with the picture from Instagram that showed that big metallic, you know, room and said "kill room." I think #kill room. I'm familiar with that.
Right.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, he located the building where that room is. It's down the block from these pizzeria places, and it's called the Pegasus Museum. And when he did a small little obscure video about it on YouTube, Alefantis himself found the video and contacted Ryan O'Neal and started making some pretty blatant threats against him. And O'Neal was nervous enough. He did take the videos down. He has all the screenshots of their conversations. I've interviewed him extensively. He did go to an attorney, and he did an interview with the FBI there in Austin, Texas, about the situation. So you can't give a statement to the FBI and lie to them. He'd be in big trouble for that. What's going on with that? I don't know at this point. If anything's, he seems to be happy with the way things are going. I was contacted by another person who actually worked over there, who described as a college-age student being given cocaine and alcohol and being sexually harassed, and tells me that there was a minor under 18 who was there associated with the pizzeria too that was molested there on the grounds. So these are people, both of those statements are off the air, but I do have a statement. I do have an interview on the air with Ryan O'Neal.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure to listen to that. And I did a search for Pizzagate Pegasus Museum,
right?
And I found something with 48,000 views on it, but it might not be from the person you said. And you said Ryan O'Neal, is that what you said?
Yeah, Ryan O'Neal, but it's spelled differently from the Ryan O'Neal with the Tatum O'Neal's father.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how it's spelled?
Yeah, Oneal.
Okay. Ryan O'Neal, Ed Opperman. Okay. All right. I'm going to listen to that after the show. I just wanted to have it queued up. So you're saying that you have, I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
You're saying that you have a witness statement from someone who worked there.
Yep.
Who knows of an underage person they worked with or who was there who was molested on the ground.
Yes.
Wow. And you talked about that on the show. That's Ryan O'Neal?
No, that might have happened after Ryan O'Neal. I think that came after Ryan O'Neal, a couple of months later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And what can be done with that information? Is that the person involved doesn't want to press charges, I suppose, and it's just hearsay or what?
Well, you couldn't press charges, maybe a civil suit, okay?
Right.
And I'm trying to, pursue these efforts,
You are?
Oh,
You're
sure.
Trying to show them still.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never give up. Yeah. I'm always.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I'm interested in these days is trying to get stuff done in these cases in whatever way is possible. It's actually one of the reasons I kind of abandoned Hampstead, and you guys talked about that. I'm sorry. You and David Schroeder talked about that. I talked about it with him too.
Yeah.
Is that I worked with Ella, I interviewed her, and I did at least 9 hours, maybe more, of coverage just on Hampstead, and I was looking to get somewhere, and it didn't seem like it was going anywhere. It didn't seem like I had necessarily a willing partner on that.
Right.
So I wanted to move on to something where there was some route to go. And you know what else I heard with Hampstead? Maybe you can tell me.
Right.
David Schroeder says he has information that kids are safe and happy. Do you have any information on how the kids are doing? That's what I'm most interested in.
No, I do not. I dropped Abe and Ella shortly after the interview and stayed in touch with Schroeder about that up until, I guess, about 9 months ago or whatever when he left the station. And I don't know anything more about Abe and Ella other than whatever they have going on there on YouTube with their fake accounts and their trolling is just they're on some bizarre trip that has nothing to do with kids or exposing anything. I don't know what they're into doing, but it's a big game with them. Yeah,
you were talking about the trolls at one point and how they show up in odd ways,
right?
And I think there's something going on there with both sides maybe being operated kind of by the same.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you on that. There is, because even stuff that was leaked out to the other side. It's just there's no way. There's something very bizarre going on, and it's not even a professional operation either. They're very sloppy about what they're doing. I think it's just a bunch of goofballs. I don't think it's really a big psyop or anything like that.
Yeah, well, Ella thinks it's kept telling me it was the UK government. I think it could very well be the UK government. I'm not sure. I had human intelligence. I had somebody come pretend to be my girlfriend online,
right,
and then run psyops. I'm saying she was, had this terrible fall and that all this kind of supernatural stuff was happening to her. And she was like near death. Her house was possessed. She said her daughter's roommate in college was approached by somebody. But I think it was all to make me think that, because she encouraged me to cover Hampstead, right? And then did all this stuff to make me think she was under attack. I found out it wasn't true. So I'm not being just. And then she sent the cops to my house for a quote unquote wellness check. So there's real stuff involved with this Hampstead. Like, I think they wanted me to cover it and then to just destroy me so that anybody else who wanted to cover it wouldn't want to. I really feel like that's what they were trying to do. but anyway, that's what happened to me.
That's interesting. That's interesting because it was such a chaotic situation with so many people coming at you. It would be easy to get drawn into it. Like I think Schroeder was. Schroeder got very drawn into that with those Hochstead page, arguing back and forth. And he kept sending me stuff from I don't care about that. The show's over. You know what I mean?
Right.
Got to move on. But you're right. It's very easy to get sucked into that and be totally distracted. And in this business, there's a lot of that too. A lot of distraction. People trying to eat up all your attention, a bunch of...
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, they'll come in. I mean, I've had it happen to me. I cover stuff like hoaxes and false flags and stuff. And so I guess that's why they demonetized me, and they really, really don't like that stuff. And I've had different agents come in, they'll try to befriend you or give you, misdirect you most of the time. Just give you effed up information or try to get you going off on some course. It just happens. And unfortunately, you got to ignore the trolls in the end. You've probably realized that. Otherwise, that's exactly what they want you to do is respond to them and fight back. And David gets in a cycle of fighting back a little bit. Which I try to encourage him not to, but it's kind of his way. So, but you've been on the other side of it. I was going to ask you, I've had so much harassment. They've sent letters to my dad, to claim like official letters telling me to stop and that I'm guilty of some crimes. I mean, they called him, left a message on his cell phone. I mean, real heavy harassment. I'm wondering how I see you cover this stuff. You're one of the only people I know. Have you experienced that kind of thing, or are you just better protected from it because you're a private investigator, or what?
Well, no, I think I've had worse than that. I've had real serious problems. And the little stuff, like if someone's calling up and saying, "Hey, Opperman, we're going to kill you," that kind of stuff, I'm not worried about because if you're really going to kill me, and that's not the way you're going to do it. But I've worked real serious criminal defense cases. Back in New York when I was a young man, we worked on all the big mafia cases: the Commission trial, the Pizza Connection trial. Well, not the Pizzagate, Pizza Connection. These big, giant mafia cases. So I know how witnesses get intimidated, how witnesses get threatened, how people professionally are threatened and intimidated. And I've had that happen to me. So, listen, I'll give you an example. Okay, I was just working on a case for my work for $85 an hour with this. It was a TRO violation where we violated this woman's probation and we got her thrown in jail. They let her out of jail, and it was all my report that got her arrested, got her violated. I had to testify in the case. It was all me that got this woman put away, and they let her out before the hearing, and they let her travel to Las Vegas. So no one cares. The woman could have came and killed me. She's insane. You should see her mugshot. She's freaking insane. All the stuff she did to my clients. So I can get killed, by some crazy nut for $85 an hour. The other stuff I'm doing here, I think is important stuff. I've worked on some really important stuff. Stuff that's going to be in the history books. So if I get killed over this, then at least it's kind of worth it.
Right. Well, that's the way I feel about it too. Yeah. It's just I'm doing a show out of my dad's garage, and I never done anything serious like you have. Yeah, I guess it makes sense with your kind of background. You've been through it, and this isn't such a big deal to you. It's just me. I came from selling cars and just wanted to change the world,
right?
And so I had to get used to what the backlash is for doing that, for really covering stuff that people don't want you talking about. Particularly this child sex abuse stuff and satanic ritual abuse, which you cover, and how long have you been doing that, by the way? How long have you been looking into child sexual abuse stuff?
Well, that kind of stuff, like McMartin and SRA cases and that kind of stuff, since the 80s, when it was going on, I would be live on Usenet. They used to have on Usenet, which was like a bulletin board chat room kind of thing. Back in the old days. And they would have alt SRA, alt McMartin, alt OJ, and all this stuff. So I was in the thick of this way back in those days. So I've been following this forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've been reporting on it and talking about it that whole time?
Only been reporting. Well, discussing things online and stuff like that and talking to people, I had met Ted Gunderson years and years and years ago. And then I'd met the mother of the McMartin case, like around 87, 90, around that time. So, but reporting, I've only been reporting like this for 3 or 4 years. Only doing a radio show and reporting like this for 3 or 4 years. I used to write articles. I wrote a book. I wrote articles and stuff about PI stuff. But actually investigating this kind of stuff and reporting on it, I'm fairly new.
In terms of reporting on it, and then what were you doing then? Were you an activist basically in terms of what you were doing as far as writing articles and online, helping out with investigations, or what were you doing in that time? So what were you doing to change the world, I guess, in that time, or did you come to that as far as doing your show and everything because you wanted to get the word out more broadly?
Well, I've always been an activist. I came out of the Yippies in New York City. I don't know if you know that whole story, but I've always been like a Lower East Side street activist, protesting and stuff like that. And, met some fascinating people and really opened up my eyes at a very young age. And then, with PI work not on low levels, trying to help people with their cases, custody cases and stuff like that. I've done that as an activist. I said, volunteering work and stuff like that. Reporting up until I kept a very low profile my whole life up until like the Tiger Woods case around that time, and when it just all blew up and I was being interviewed all the time. My articles were all about just PI stuff, how to locate somebody, how to catch your wife cheating on you, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I just started getting interviewed, but I've always had a fascination with this kind of topic, like McMartin and these kind of things, and I always knew it was real. And so when I got an opportunity to do the show, those were the topics I chose to do right away. My first show was on West Memphis 3, very controversial topics.
Right. I was just talking to somebody with a big channel on YouTube about the West Memphis 3, and maybe we can hear your opinion on it. I'm interested in that too. So you were, I don't know your history with the trial you mentioned, with the Tiger Woods trial.
Oh yeah.
Is that what you're best known for, or?
Well, okay. No, not best known. I wouldn't say. I don't know what I'm best known for, but I've been in. I did all the cell phones in the Tiger Woods case. When the first woman came, I had this agent who was representing me, trying to get me on reality TV shows and stuff, and just to market my business. And I was helping her with PI work. So she came across the Tiger Woods case, and the first couple of women that came forward got big giant settlements from the Woods side, the Tiger Woods team. So all these other women started coming forward wanting to get a piece of the action too, get TV appearances and magazine shots and all their different things. So they needed someone to vet out all these women, and that was my job. And I settled on 15 women. We could have went on forever. I could be still doing it today probably, but we stopped at 15 because I said I've done enough. I've done enough. And what I did was these women would send me their cell phones. We'd pull all the deleted texts and pictures and stuff out of their phones. And if I could prove they were with Woods, then they were in the A team. If we couldn't prove them, then they were off the team. So that was Tiger Woods. And then I did a big case with Charlie Sheen. My client was Capri Anderson. I've been involved in a lot of 24-hour news stories over the years. I did some stuff with Howard Stern. Wienergate.
How do you like Howard? I used to listen to Howard. He's awesome. He's kind of an inspiration for me as far as learning how to do this. Well, hearing how to do this stuff. How do you like him? You were on his show a few times?
No, I was always a big fan. I was never actually on the show, but I was interviewed by that guy, Steve Langford.
Steve Langford, right.
Kind of ironic. Steve Langford interviewed me, and I was on the same day they were interviewing Charlie Sheen. I was in the news segment, and Charlie Sheen was in the audience. Cool. I've never met Stern, but they talked about me. There was 1 week they were talking about me all week long. I did a job for Gary when he was running for that thing, Parks Department or something in Connecticut. He was going to receive some harassing emails. And then there was another thing I did with their Jared, who worked over there. Remember Jared, the handsome guy?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, someone had set up a fake Plenty of Fish account for him, and I was trying to locate the person who did that, but then they blabbed about it all on the air, so... yeah, so that was pretty much my thing with Howard Stern.
I need to hire you to do some PI work on the people that have been messing with me. But I don't have any money.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. No one has the money to chase after those nuts. You know, it's just a lot of work and a lot of time. You know,
not worth it for me. I just try to not give them any power over me. But I have some names you could look into for me. But that's cool. That man, you're kind of famous. You're really famous to be on my show. You were going to tell me, you were talking about the McMartin case, and we studied up on that in my show yesterday. So you said you have something new on that?
The biggest thing I got on the McMartin case, okay, if you talked about it on the show yesterday, everyone knows that the children claimed that they were taken down into tunnels and molested underground, and there was satanic rituals going on underneath the ground. And first, the parents and Gunderson contacted a gentleman named Eugene Donald Michael, who was a geologist. Okay, he lives in Malibu right now. He's about 80 years old, and they had him come down. And this is before any charges or anything. They arrested anybody. This is when the allegations first surfaced, and he came down with his ground penetrating radar, and he said it was all chaotic. The family was all upset, and the McMartin preschool people were all upset, you know. But they allowed him to take some ground penetrating radar equipment and scan and look for any anomalies underneath the ground, and he couldn't find anything. Talked to Gunderson. He said, I can't find anything. So he went on his merry way. Now, later on, after the acquittal of this bunch, but by the way, too, when he was there the first time, they wouldn't. He says, what about this garage here? There was a detached garage next to the preschool, and the McMartin people told him, no, that's not our property. That belongs to the neighbors. So after the acquittal of this McMartin bunch, which is unbelievable to me to begin with, you know, because all these kids had the same sexually transmitted diseases. There was, you know, anyway, but we can go on with that later. But the thing is, after the acquittal, the McMartin family had turned over the property to their attorneys to pay the legal fees. It's very common. You can't pay your legal fees. They take a lien on your property. The lawyer takes your property. Mm-hmm. The lawyer was having the property raised so that they could build something new there. Today, there's a dry cleaners there. Now, after they raised the property, Gunderson came back with another geologist, an archaeologist, who came down and he did these extensive digs on the property, and he says that he found these tunnels underneath the property that confirmed what the kids said. And in the tunnels, he found a cauldron at one spot. He found these plates with stars on them, like pentagrams on them. And that he didn't have a lot of time to do this because they only had access to the property for a few days. And that he saw where one of the tunnels was leading up, where it would come to the surface. And he crawled underneath the house next door, and right where he figured the tunnel would be coming up, there was a bathtub under there with newly cut hole in the floor. Mm. And also, too, he discovered some piping, some sewage piping down there that had brand new clamps on them, nice shiny clamps on them. That, you know, it couldn't have cemented over that, you know, and then it wasn't the same age as the other clamps that he saw. Mm-hmm. So, and this guy wrote a very lengthy report. You could find it online, and you could find his report. It's in the Opperman Report member section as well. Now, in that report, he mentions Eugene Donald Michael, and he gets some things wrong. He calls him Dr. Michael, and he describes Michael as being working for the prosecution. He says the DA brought down Mr. Michael to come down and use his ground-penetrating radar to locate this stuff. All that's incorrect. Now, and by the way, these two have never talked to each other. Gunderson's guy, and by the way, a lot of people say that's Gunderson's report. It was really Jackie McGawley, who was Gunderson's ex-girlfriend, who was the mother of one of the kids. She's the one who actually paid for this archaeological dig, and she's got her beefs with Gunderson too over the years. But these two never talked to each other. Michael and the guy who did the archaeologist never talked to each other. But this Michael,
mean when you say these two, you mean the person who did the ground penetrating radar?
Yes.
And the second person never talked to each other?
Never talked to each other. Michael didn't even know he was mentioned in the report. Okay? Huh. Michael has never been interviewed he's never been interviewed once since he did this report. But everybody's talking about him on the internet that he's the smoking gun, that the McMartin case is a hoax because he could find nothing. Okay? I locate the guy. And I'm talking to him. He sends me a lengthy letter. You can find the letter, again, at the member section. He tells me that after the property was raised, he was invited back to the property. Now, he didn't have a camera with him that day, but what he saw with his own eyes is underneath the garage, after the garage was raised, there was a hand-dug room, a basement room, size room, underneath the garage, and there was a hand-dug staircase. And this is like sand. This is by the beach, Manhattan Beach. So that's like, it has a name for it. They call them hard sand, whatever it's called, limestone or whatever. Anyway, and it was cut, hand-dug into underneath the garage. So that's it. But we got the proof. And there's a way, too. I'm following up on this still. There's a way to get reports from, like, the building commission when they built this new property. They have all kind of reports, geological reports, grading reports on this in the public record. So I got to go get those, man, and then we'll have ultimate proof. But here's the guy. No one's talked to this guy in 40 years. They're quoting him all over the place like he's the proof that it's a hoax. And the guy's an eyewitness that there was a room underneath there.
Wow. You found him and he wrote a letter to you that you have, huh? And it's on your website?
Yeah. And there's an interview, too. I got a taped interview in like 45 minutes. Nice guy.
Have you posted that interview?
Yes, it's in the member section. It's in the member.
It's all in your members section.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you do that anyway? That's at the operareport.com?
Yeah.
operareport.com?
Yeah,
and you just members section. I see it. Okay.
Yeah, or you can go to Special Archives and just download it for $2, or you can become a member for $6. You get all the shows.
Oh, wow. $2. Okay, cool. Yeah, I started archiving my stuff on Patreon because they flag so much stuff here. You know, I don't want to get it flagged anymore, but same kind of thing. It's hard making a living doing this kind of thing. Well, you don't. You do real work for a living.
Yeah, I work 24 hours a day.
What do you do now with that information that you have? You have the interview with him. You have the letter from him. How does the case move forward? What do you do to help move the case forward or do something with that info?
Well, what I'm hoping to do with that is, again, I'm going to go to the county records and find the grading reports and the geology reports, because you need to do these surveys and stuff like that, and they're very detailed. And they go back hundreds of years. Before you can sell the property, before you can build on a property, you need approval. There's regulations, there's codes, code violations. So I'm going to get that, okay? And, but then again, just like you were saying before, you don't know who you can trust, So some people have volunteered, they're over there in California, they volunteer to go down there and pick it up for me. But, you got to be careful, because you don't know,
Yeah. Oh. Believe me, I've been tricked by so many different agents and stuff. It's just crazy. And if somebody offers you help, then that was what made me the most suspicious of someone, is if they came in, I had to reprogram because they're real people who want to help me, but it's very hard to tell the difference. That's why I didn't know if you knew who I was or if you could trust me. But I'm here in California, so I'm a little ways from there, but I'd help you out to make a difference. I'm trying to save the world, so whatever it takes. And you have something else in California I was going to talk to you about too. Is that the what you wanted to tell me about the McMartin case? That's huge stuff.
Yeah, I know.
A letter saying that there were tunnels, and just on the show yesterday, I played Gunderson's presentation where he showed slides where he talked about the tunnels being there from the second dig, basically, from where he hired an archaeologist or whatever. And he said there was like a sandwich bag, a Disney sandwich bag that was time appropriate, that was in the filled in tunnels. So Ted Gunderson was talking about it too, back then.
That second tunnel report, okay, Michael isn't too thrilled with it, He read it. I sent it to him. And by the way, you can find that on the internet too, but it's also in my member section. You can find the actual report. And he says, you know what, man, he says, unless you actually have pictures of it, he says, I'd be very suspicious of all that. I don't know. I trust Magali, okay, the woman, the mother. I believe her. Now, I had a conversation with. I can tell you all my stuff about Ted.
Let me interrupt real quick, just so people understand, so that I understand. You mean the mother of the original child?
Yeah, the mother of her kid was a victim.
Who was called schizophrenic? And
no, not her. No, that's a different woman. That's a different woman. Okay. And Magali knows her very well. And according to her, the woman was not schizophrenic and was not a terrible alcoholic. It was just a distraught parent, like they all were.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too, is it was done to discredit her.
Oh, yeah.
She was schizophrenic.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees with that. But I'll tell you some interesting things, because when I first contacted Magali, I was chatting on the internet, and she thought I was someone else. And she says, call me up, because she wanted to verify who I was. And we were just chatting, and I says, oh, yeah, I know Ted Gunderson. I said, I've done work with him. And she says, "Oh yeah, me and Ted, we don't get along anymore." And because they were dating, they were living together. And she tells me, she says, he talks on the phone, on his cell phone, to Aquino every day. And I says, well, what? Why does he do that? And she says, to make himself feel important. And I says, oh, okay. And I just, because I was so blinded by Ted Gunderson, I looked up to the guy, that I just believed it. But now you hear all these other stories about Gunderson. I've had other people come to me, too. It says about him and DeCamp that neither one could be trusted. And when you look at their history, it is kind of, no one ever went to jail for all of his work, all of his stuff. What was his first case? His first case was the Jeff McDonald case down there in North Carolina. And who was his witness? His witness, he had control over the eyewitness. He had full control over her. Who was stationed on that base at the same time? There was the Jeff McDonald case went down, that suddenly Gunderson's quitting his job to go run down there in North Carolina to cover. Colonel Michael Aquino was stationed on that same base at the same time. That's a pretty big coincidence to me.
Yeah, first I heard somebody questioning it was when I had David Schroeder on my show. He was questioning Gunderson, and it's hard to believe he's like one of the heroes. And you were thinking the same of him at the time, it sounds like.
Right.
Man, it's so complicated. You can't trust anybody. I was even wondering if the psychiatrists that were getting the false memory, because they did interview the kids wrong, right? We agree on that. Right? That they did screw up the way they interviewed the kids?
The CIS group, that those therapists, they stand behind their work to this day. I haven't seen the videos. I don't know if they interviewed the kids correctly or not. But back to Gunderson in a second, too, because, I've talked to Schroeder about Gunderson. By the way, Schroeder says he has some CDs Gunderson sent him. He was supposed to give them to me. I never got them. I'd love to get those. I'd make up with him just to get a peek at those things, man. But a couple other things. When Gunderson was being sued by Art Bell, I contacted Gunderson, and I tried to negotiate a settlement with him, okay? Because I helped negotiate the settlement with David Oates and Art Bell. So I contacted Gunderson. I said, hey, man, how's it going? I said, what about this lawsuit? I just helped him settle with, Oates. You want me to help you? And he said, no, I'm not worried about that because, my insurance company's handling it, right? And he told me that his errors in omissions insurance, your PI insurance, was covering that form. He was using his errors and omissions insurance for that lawsuit. Now, at the time, I said, okay, that makes sense. Because if you're a PI and you make a mistake, you leave something out of your report and you get sued, you have errors and omissions insurance. But as a radio host, I can't use that for a defamation case, okay? They're not going to help me. Now I know that. But then I didn't know that. I had a client comes to me one day. She's telling me all her problems. She's over there in California. And she goes, and I even told Ted Gunderson. And this is right before he died. And I says, oh, yeah. Well, how'd you tell him? Well, I ran into him at the FBI headquarters. He was still working there. So she tells me he was still working at FBI headquarters over there in Los Angeles because she ran into him. I trust her, and this was right years after supposedly he retired. And I've talked to other people and says, oh, yeah, he could have been doing some consulting work and went back there for a job or this or that or whatever. So who knows? So that's my Ted Gunderson stuff.
Man, it just shows you how screwed up everything is now, upside down it is. Now, my opinion from seeing kind of the coverage and looking at the text they had, the transcripts of the interviews with the kids, they were leading. And maybe that's how they got so many kids tied up in it. And maybe it helped in discrediting the real stories, which it sounds like there really were with doctors' reports. You said with venereal diseases basically being the same among the kids. Similar, sort of like the Presidio stuff with Aquino. There was so much stuff there, including sexually transmitted diseases and stuff, and nothing happened there. As far as not being able to trust anybody, like, what do we do? What do we do to really? What I want to do is interview more survivors, and there are a lot of these commissions now trying to go after child sexual abuse stuff, and a lot of the survivors are withdrawing, saying that they don't trust the people leading the investigations, and so forth. And then there aren't really there aren't many people in media to trust either. For these people to talk to. Anyway, what do you see as a way forward on this stuff? You're looking at it from actually finding the finding the dirt, the real info, and then moving forward with a case. Like, what would you do? I just want to know, technically, what would you do with the information that you found that this guy says there were tunnels there? What would you be able to do to reopen the case?
That's a good question. Pretty much nothing. And the only thing we can do with that is go to the public opinion, and hold a press conference down there at the press club in D.C., something like that, and hope that we could turn the story around. But, here you had like Oliver Stone, he does that movie with James Woods where this fictionalized version of the lawsuit, and the poor McMartins were badly treated. And CBS News was in on it too, because 60 Minutes had that interview inside the home of those people with the false memory syndrome, group. So it's an uphill battle, What listen, I'm hoping that I have my stuff documented, if I can get a witness statement, an affidavit or something like that, get a video deposition, that stuff is great, and it'll be documented for history. It'll be there available for people to find later on, to continue the work. This the most I can hope for. Just keep compiling the evidence until every now and then you can get a lawsuit or something like that. I had one I was kind of hoping would be working out, but it seems to be falling apart. I don't know, but a couple of things back to, again, with Ted Gunderson. Remember, this guy was COINTELPRO. This was the real COINTELPRO. He was COINTELPRO in Los Angeles, going after these Black Panthers, having them set up and arrested and busted and killing each other. That's what he was, wow. For real. And again, too, you talk about Presidio there in California with Aquino. You know who gave the whitewash report on that? Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah.
Trump's buddy.
Right. Well, let's get into Trump then.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up. Yeah. So I have a feeling he's dirty in this stuff, and he's got the links to Epstein. You want to start with the links to Epstein?
Well, his links to Epstein are undeniable, and his links to Dershowitz and Giuliani, who was the whitewash for Presidio. But another one he's connected to that a lot of people don't talk about is John Casablancas. That's really what Trump got into, all his modeling stuff. Ever read Cuttlefish?
Right, John Casablancas, elite modeling, right?
Right. And a well-known guy, pervert type guy. He's got this picture of him in Studio 54 with these young little 13-year-old models, and he's serving them cookie and milk from champagne glasses on a silver tray. A perverted photo op.
What's his name again? Let me give me the last name. I'm going to pull up a photo of him.
Casablancas.
Casablancas. Okay.
Elite modeling. Yeah. And even he was Trump's best friend. He's the one that took Trump around to Studio 54 and got him involved in all that kind of stuff. Studio 54, by the way, too. Is up to their neck in the whole Son of Sam stuff. We can get into that too if you want. And Roy Cohen, the other one too, who's also involved in Studio 50, also involved in Son of Sam up to his neck. David Berkowitz. I just got interviewed Carl Denaro, who was shot by the Son of Sam cult, and David Berkowitz had Roy Cohen's phone number in his wallet when they arrested him.
Oh wow!
But back to Trump and Casablancas.
All right, I'm showing Casablancas now. Man, I could do like 3 hours with you with all the stuff you got. Yeah, I'm showing Casablancas now. Some of his girls. I'll try to see if there's here he is too. Big modeling agency. Elite was huge.
Huge, and now it's like a con game. They lure these poor kids in, charge them $500 to do their modeling portfolio. But at one time, but he had scandals. He had scandals because his reputation around these young girls, And where did President Mr. Trump, where did he send his beautiful daughter Ivanka to go become a model? With John Casablancas. That's who he turned his daughter over to, knowing this guy's reputation. Where Trump himself is on, you could hear him on Howard Stern saying, I'd go to Studio 54 and they'd have these models. Models, you'd know their name, you see them on TV, and they're on a bench getting screwed by 7 guys. That's what the President of the United States says. So Trump himself... to model himself after Casablancas, opens up his own modeling agency, Trump Model Management, right? And according to Trump, he makes $3 million a year from Trump Model Management. He got sued because he had this little Haitian girl who, and by the way, it said on his website there, I don't think it's still on there anymore, that you could be young as 12 years old and get a job at Trump Modeling Agency. He got sued by this little Haitian girl. She was brought into this country on an HB-1 visa by Trump Modeling Agency, claiming that she was going to make $80,000 a year. When she gets here, she's put into a studio apartment with bunk beds with like 5 other girls. Okay, she's in there. And what they do is, I know the modeling business. I'm here in Vegas. I know a lot of models. I know a lot of modeling agents and photographers. I know makeup artists. I know this is big business here in Vegas, with all conventions and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's not uncommon, okay, to you got a gig and you deduct hair and makeup, transportation. You deduct all this stuff from the money. This girl made like $11,000 in 3 years, living here like a prisoner. Mm-hmm. Half of these models don't speak English. Turns out that of all the HB1 visas Mr. Trump has used in all his career and all his different businesses, his golf courses and his hotels and all stuff like that, the majority of them were importing little girls from foreign countries and Trump modeling agency. Wow. Now, where else do we see this HB1 visa business and modeling agencies? Jean-Luc Brunel, who's the buddy of Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. They even have a couple of lawsuits with each other back and forth because Brunel says his reputation's been damaged by his association with Epstein. How's that for a laugh? When Epstein because Epstein was convicted, okay? He's a convicted child molester, paying underage prostitutes, according to the final conviction that they got. Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a notorious modeling scout, okay, that's how he's titled, but he's been involved in all kinds of scandals, too, for roofies and date rape drugs and GHB and all this kind of stuff with this character. Mr. Brunel goes to visit Mr. Epstein more times than there were visiting sessions. He was in there for, I think it was 13 months, and he visited more times than there were visiting. So he visited at one time at least twice in one day, one available visiting day.
Visiting him in prison? Is that what you're saying?
In his private wing, because Jeffrey Epstein stayed in a private wing in the jail. There were no other prisoners next to him. He had donated $100,000 to that sheriff's department. When they incarcerated him, and it was only weekends and nights. During the day, he could hop on his jet and fly down to the Virgin Islands if he wanted to. Or he could fly to New Mexico, his big ranch he has out there. All the stuff he could do on his own private jet, do whatever he wanted. And he spent there Sundays, and Sunday was visiting day, and that's when Mr. Brunel would come and visit every single Sunday, and one Sunday twice.
And he was Trump's modeling scout, this guy.
No, he was Epstein. No, he was his own modeling scout, but he was the one. He had the same pattern. The reason why Brunel was a heavyweight in this business is he had the HB1 visa scam where he could get these girls and import these girls from foreign countries, Czech Republic, and all these kind of places he's getting them from.
And when you say H-1B visa scam, do you have to have some kind of special access or to H-1B visas then? Did Trump have some kind of unique setup because of his other businesses or what?
No, because for each one you bring in, you have to have a business and you have to show that they're going to be employed when they come in, and you could demonstrate this. But once he knew what he was doing. Trump's, by the way, his immigration attorney is the same guy who was John Lennon's immigration attorney. So a little fact there for you. Who, by the way, now is pissed off at Trump because when he saw this Trump's Muslim ban, he flipped out on Trump and turned against him. So maybe something will come out there. So now people say, okay, but Ed, what solid connections are there between Trump and Epstein? Everyone knows the famous quote from Vicky Ward where Trump says, "I've known Jeffrey Epstein for 15 years, a great guy. And people say he loves beautiful women just as much as I do, and many of them are the younger guy. Oh, yeah, that Jeffrey, he sure lives a social life." Okay? So he's known Jeffrey Epstein for 15 years. Dershowitz, another one mentioned by Virginia Roberts as being involved in Epstein's activities. Trump has been on Epstein's plane. Okay? Trump got his own plane. What does he need Epstein's plane for? Okay? But
how do we know? Let me just interrupt. I hear that all the time. How do we know he was on the plane? There's some kind of logs or something that are actually documented?
No, he's not on the logs. He's in the deposition. Jeffrey Epstein's brother. A lot of these, Jeffrey Epstein's brother has like 100 little corporations under his name. No one knows what the hell they are, what they do, what's going on with them. But whatever he's doing, who knows? But he gave a deposition where he talks about, yes, Mr. Trump was on the plane. What was he doing on the plane? I don't know. You'll have to ask him. That's what we know.
Wow.
But there are flight logs that mention everybody else. Clinton was on there 24 times, and 11 of those times, don't quote me, but he was on there 24 times. Yeah, I think it was 11. 11 of those times he ditched his Secret Service detail And I talked to Gary Byrne, the Secret Service agent, who wrote the book about the Clintons. And he says, oh, yeah, you can't just ditch your Secret Service detail. You got to fill out a form. You got to sign a waiver. That's be notarized. You can't just, there's legalities involved. You can't just tell them, okay, I'm going by myself today. There's forms you got to do. Yeah.
You're the president of the United States.
No, but this is when after he was president, though.
After, yeah. Oh, man. Still, yeah. You can't. They're responsible for guarding your life, theoretically.
Right.
So you're not supposed to just get rid of them. Man, that stuff is so crazy, and that people don't really think about it. I covered the Epstein case, the Giselle, what was her name?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine Maxwell, yeah, because Cernovich became involved with that, and then Dershowitz was her attorney. So we know Dershowitz's connection to Epstein for sure, and then Dershowitz is connected to Trump also.
Oh, yeah. Dershowitz is going on right now. He's going on all the talk shows saying that there's nothing to impeach Trump on. There's nothing about this these Russian stuff. But Cernovich, his motion that he filed is pretty much a ghost motion that was written on behalf. It's identical to the one that Dershowitz wrote. So he's fronting for Dershowitz. I hope you're following Pierce Redmond, who's doing a lot of good work on this, has his ear to the ground on all this. But another thing people don't talk about is, first of all, is Epstein and Trump are neighbors down there in Palm Beach. You can walk back and forth from Mar-a-Lago to Epstein's property. We found a picture caption. I think it was using DocuSearch, like a LexisNexis type program, where there's an image. We know there exists an image of Trump, Epstein, and Prince Andrew of York. Okay, and he used the name Andrew York when he was there. Andrew York, Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump at a tennis tournament at Trump Plaza at the Mar-a-Lago down there. The image is not, you can't find it on the internet, but we know there's a caption for it. It was probably published in Trump's own publication down there on the property. Now, Virginia Roberts, the one who's filing all these lawsuits against Dershowitz and against Epstein, against Ghislaine Maxwell, doing all these lawsuits. Do you know how Epstein found her? She was working at Mar-a-Lago. She was 15 years old, working in the ladies' locker room at Mar-a-Lago, folding towels. When she meets Ghislaine Maxwell pimps her over to Epstein. Okay? Right. And we know later on, too, Ghislaine Maxwell, you find her in pictures. She was at the Chelsea Clinton's wedding after all this, after the investigation, after the arrest, after the conviction. So not only did Virginia Roberts work for Trump, her father worked for Trump in the maintenance department, too. Now, people say, well, Ed, Trump doesn't know all of his employees. He's like Mr. Howell. He has all these employees all over the world, right? He's like Mr. Potter. He owns the bank. He's a big, rich, powerful man. There's a lawsuit in California. Trump owned a golf course in California, there in Los Angeles. Okay, and he's being sued by his employees over there. And he says one of the things that he would do is when he would come and visit twice a year, he would walk through the property and comment that there were unattractive women working on the property, and he didn't like that. So when we knew he was coming, we would try and adjust the schedule so that there would be more attractive women on the property that wouldn't be there. Now, so if he's doing that when he goes to this property twice a year, he lives at Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
He's checking out every girl in there. There's no way he didn't know Virginia Roberts. There's no way he didn't know Virginia Roberts' dad. So,
yeah, he's the kind of guy that knows what's going on. He's a lot sharper than people give him credit for, and I'm sure he would absolutely know, especially if he's tied up in all this stuff. And it just seems to me, and people get upset because I think you're right that there are legitimate people who just want Trump to work out and want things to be going in the right direction and want to believe. But there's a lot of disinformation pushing Trump, not being, first of all, on the cusp of breaking open. It's always that we're on the cusp of breaking open this huge thing, swordfish and all this bull ass that comes out from the Cernoviches and David Siemens, and that something's always about to happen. And then there are all these kind of scandals or conspiracy theory things that come up, sort of like Seth Rich, and the stuff George Webb goes on and on about. I just wonder, you know, do you feel like, I don't know if I asked this question right before, do you feel like there's a concerted effort in media, well, specifically on YouTube and maybe with websites pushing that are supportive of Trump, that are deliberately, or at least following a plan to deliberately distract from these more important issues, including Russia, which we can talk about whether that's legitimate or not. But do you believe that there's a campaign to do that?
You know, some of the names you mentioned, okay, have talked about people that I've interviewed, people that I've talked to personally, you know, and then suddenly I see, you know, a name you mentioned, they're reporting on their YouTube channel, you know, of what they know about it. When I know for a fact they've never talked to the guy, you know, that's a fact. Now, whether they're just doing it because they want the income from the YouTube hits, or they just like their face on the thing, or they like people liking their thing and clicking and hearting and all that stuff, I don't know, you know. But I know there's a lot of BS going on. Like you said, there's a lot of talk, you know, with no facts to back it up. That's 100%. I can testify in court to that. Nothing I can tell you. No, I busted people blatantly, man, just making stuff up, you know. And then I told them about it, and they continue doing it. So, you know, I could test. I have exhibits. The thing is, you know,
yeah.
The other thing was, though, too, was I forgot what I was going to say. Radio stations. Okay, I can tell you this: AM, FM radio, especially AM talk radio, is controlled by the right wing. It's tightly controlled by the right wing. And the sponsors and stuff like that, they have an agenda they want to put forth. I've talked to some of these big sponsors like Swiss America, you know, and they want you to keep talking about the coming global collapse and all this kind of stuff. So there's a whole agenda going on there, and they box you out if you're a leftist, you know, like I am. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I'm not a Clinton supporter. People think, well, he doesn't like Trump, he likes Clinton. I don't like Clinton. And in fact, much of my stuff that I report about the Clintons was used by the Trump campaign as part of their opposition research. I could get into all that if you want to. I think I mentioned to you in one of the emails. But these small station owners and these hosts who put people on the air that they know are full of crap, which is a lot of that goes on, because we all talk behind the scenes. I'm on a bunch of stations. We all talk to each other. And you know, they know these guys are full of crap. So there's some of that going on too. And so there's, some of it is professional disinformation campaigns. Some of it's personal greed. They're con men. And they want gullible people listening to their show, because gullible people are more likely to invest and to donate money and buy their gadgets and their storable food and their, you know, penis enlargement pills. You know what I mean? So other than that, I don't know, man.
Yeah, well, I think, you identified it. I think bringing in sponsors to that, too, is I talk to people about how, this end of the world stuff, it's just good for money and prepping and selling gold and silver. And that's what I do. I have no sponsors. I can't run ads. I do everything with donations, and I try not to tell people I'm going to do something with it I'm not going to do, which a lot of people do, I think, especially ones who claim they're out protecting children in some way and then never actually do anything that amounts to that. Some of it is probably personal greed, but it's interesting. Yeah, sponsors are going to push people in a particular direction, and I guess people just go for it, in order to be on the radio. Otherwise you don't have a job for the most part.
And the other one too is donations, though. That's not always safe either, because I can talk about Awake. When I first got on Awake Radio, just as a host, I was talking about some stuff, and a big donor to the station said, "Oh, no, that's gossip. We don't like that kind of talk on our station." You know, I was talking like Charlie Sheen stuff and that kind of thing, Zimmerman case and things. "Oh, no, that's all gossip. We don't like that on our station." And I said, "Well, who are you? Tell me what to put on my show." You know, and Ed, she's a big donor. You got to be nice to her. So there's a lot of that too. A lot of these stations, they call listener sponsors and stuff like that, and they've only got like 10 big donors who donate month in, month out, and they have a lot of editorial control over what goes on there too. So that's not, you know, unless you're independently wealthy in some kind of way. You know,
I just take donations directly to me, and I know nobody can. I don't know how I'm gonna live like a normal person and not in my dad's house and stuff.
I don't mean to accuse you of anything. I didn't mean to say that.
No. It's a good point, because that's the difference, I guess. But I can see how it works. Like if I have a donor that gives me $100, that's a big deal. And I could see then, trying to pal up with that person, present content. Like I can see how it naturally develops. I just have to put out as much resistance as possible and just do things because I think they're really important. And if people, reward that, then that's great. And I'm really appreciative for the support I get. But yeah, you can see how the message, it's so hard to bring the truth and the real important stuff because it doesn't pay very well.
It's so true, man. It is so true.
So, boy, there are a few things you touched on. There was something you touched on that you said we could talk about more. Do you remember what that was?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, then, boy, there were a bunch of things. Hold on, Ed. We're gonna resettle here. So we were just talking about what were we just on?
Trump and Epstein.
Okay. But we finished that, and then we got into these characters covering things up, and then we got into, well, you tell me something else that you want. Oh, Russian. There, that's what we can do.
All right.
We can talk about Russian adoptions. I gave like half of my show yesterday was on the McMartin case, and then the other half I tried to broach the topic of how these Russian adoptions might be connected with Trump, and how I don't know for sure if it's related to what you're going to tell me about, but there is a big story that kind of unfolded with Donald Trump Jr. meeting with this attorney who was trying to kill the Magnitsky Act, and supposedly the meeting, Donald Trump told Jr. to say it was about Russian adoptions, and Russian adoptions and the Magnitsky Act were originally tied together, so that's a thing that involves Trump directly, and possibly these Russian adoptions. And now you have something to tell me that you found out about those. Yeah.
Trump himself says when he was at the G20 thing, he was pulled aside by Putin, or he chatted with Putin, and he says out of his own mouth that we talked about Russian adoptions. So if you're a fan of Mr. Trump, you got to believe what he says, right? That's what he says, not what I'm saying. That's what he says. Then right. Trump Jr. also, too, put out a statement that said, I met with this Russian lawyer and like 8 other people in the room. It's Manafort, the Jared Kushner, the whole thing there. And I said, and we started talking about Russian adoptions, the Magnitsky thing, right? So that's what they say. They're saying they talk. I believe them. I believe that there was some talk about Russian adoptions, because what I found out is, and again, this goes back a long way, and it goes back to Pizzagate. I noticed in the Pizzagate, when I was looking at Pizzagate, there was a name of this adoption agency, this group that was liking things on Alefantis' Instagram. So I started looking into them. And I found out this advocates for, because the whole adoption business I found out is just a disgusting, horrible business. And I found out that this group who advocates for these mothers who have their kids taken away from them through the adoption process, And one story was that that group that was involved with Alefantis, the woman gave up her child for adoption. Well, didn't give up the kid yet, but they were going to pay her medical fees and stuff like that, her hospital bill, and in return she was going to give up her child for adoption, but she changed her mind. So they confronted her in the parking lot of the hospital and told her, if you don't hand the baby over to us now, we're going to call the police and have you arrested for this money you owe us. And they took the baby out of her hands. The baby's gone. She has no idea where they went. After this story started hitting the papers and stuff like that, the adoption agency went out of business and started up with the same officers in a different adoption agency. But that one now is also out of business. So I became friendly with these people, these women, these advocates for people caught up in this adoption system. And I found out that it's a pretty shady business, and a lot of them are, even though the adoption may take place in Texas or Florida or Nevada, they're done out of these corporations in places like Utah, where the laws are favorable to these adoption agencies, quote unquote. They're supposed to be vetting people out. And there's another issue too, where once the kids are put up for adoption, no one checks on what happens to the kid after they're into the adoption, been adopted out. And if they're private adoptions through just an attorney's office, there's even less vetting that goes on. So I started looking into this No, what happened was then I started, because I had all these contacts now in the adoption business, I started doing adoption investigations and reuniting people, locating adoptive parents and adoptive daughters. So now when I heard about this thing about Russian adoptions, I said, well, wait a second. With all I know about this doesn't sound too good. I don't like the sound of this at all. And I started finding out that, first of all, there's only 10 countries in the whole world that have any kind of vetting out of these overseas adoptions. There's places you can go to, especially in Asia, where kids all day long are being snatched up off the beach and off the street and sold to orphanages and then put up for adoption for $10,000 a piece to parents in the United States, and there's no paperwork whatsoever. Okay? Wow. There's 10 countries that have a system of paperwork and regulations and things you have to go through. And one of them is Russia. And one of the reasons, now everyone tries to say that Russia stopped this overseas adoption things because of the Magnitsky Act, and possibly that's true, but another reason it's because a child who was adopted from Russia to the United States, a lot of these kids who come, especially from Russia and Eastern Europe, they're damaged kids. They've been abused as infants. They don't have that kind of bonding with an adult, so they've got problems when they come. Mm-hmm. The parents can't deal with their problems. In one case, they took a child that they had adopted from Russia. They put him back on a plane to Russia with a note in an envelope. And it says, well, hey, get on the plane, go off there, and then show them the note when you get off the plane. And that's when Russia really says, hey, we're not having these adoptions in the United States anymore. There's the Wild West over there.
Right.
So what happens is, what I've uncovered, which to me is more horrific than anything I've seen in Pizzagate so far, because it's the total Wild West. And what happens is when these parents here in the United States get these kids from overseas adoptions, they decide that they can't care for them. The kids have too many issues, too many problems, and they talk about it openly. They discuss it openly online. My child is sexually aggressive. My child has an alcohol problem. She's hurting the other kids. He's hurting the other kids in the household. So they have these secondary groups to rehome these kids. Now, in that situation, there's absolutely no oversight whatsoever. And the only, you talk about before how a lot of these victims of SRA abuse and stuff like that will go into Congress for congressional hearings and trying to get some kind of hope from that. There is none. The only hearings there were in this instance were to make it, was to make it easier for these parents to give up the kids and send them back to Russia. Not to any kind of oversight or anybody protecting these kids. Now, they advertise these kids, and there's dozens of websites that I found doing this. I don't want to give up too much information because there's a lot of perverted people out there on YouTube. I'm sure you deal with them yourself. And you see some of the stuff that's going on YouTube especially. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to let people know where they can snatch up some of these kids.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Or even looking at the pictures and stuff because it's traumatizing. But now the thing is where these parents are advertising their kids, they want to rehome these kids and they want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. And they got a picture of the kid. This is my little 9-year-old daughter. She's sexually aggressive. She's using alcohol and pot. Little blonde hair, blue eyes. So they're advertising these kids to the highest bidder. Just take this kid and get rid of him. There's no adoption, paperwork, guardianship, nothing. They do a power of attorney saying I'm giving guardianship to this other family. And then all you get for that is, you can take the kid to a doctor, you can enroll them in school and stuff like that. But there's no new adoption process and no one watching over these kids whatsoever. Now, and some of these kids, it's been tracked down. This is how some of these kids have wound up in the homes of pedophiles, in the homes of parents who have lost their other kids. One home, there was an article about it, where the family who was doing this, the kids had died in their home, And
right.
Another one was this little Chinese girl, and she was on crutches. And the people who took her in, they had like 10 kids on this farm. They says, once you live in here, no one knows if you're alive or dead. They used to have the kids dig their own graves on the property when they were misbehaving. And when they caught the parents says, oh, no. We had them dig. We had them dig holes. And we would tell them, oh, no, you're just digging yourself in deeper by telling more lies. But right. The kids' reports saying that they were digging their own graves. So there's a whole new avenue that's not being investigated or reported on by anybody of this rehoming these kids with basically no paperwork.
And this,
yeah.
No, so keep going.
Well, one other thing too is I even found out because I go to a church. I'm a Christian guy, and I always thought that this crisis pregnancy center was like a good thing. The kids, these young women, they're pregnant, and they need help. You don't want to have abortions, but it turns out that they insert these adoption agencies, these fly-by-night ones, these fugazi ones. They insert people into these crisis pregnancy centers in churches around the country, and they go in as volunteers. No one's paying them. They're dying for help to come in, and I've seen this with my own eyes. There was a thing here. We have a Catholic church near us here, and they got this big, expensive Winnebago, like a bus, and all these women are just standing around. They're waiting for a pregnant girl to show up. You know what I'm saying? Well, this seems like a lot of people here, for waiting for some walk-in pregnant girl, and they're being directed to these fly-by-night adoption agencies, which are making this is a huge business too. Man, they're making a ton of money off of this.
I bet they are.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's really something you uncovered. And this is happening right here in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
And it's happening with children specifically that have a lot of times been adopted from overseas in the first place. And then you're saying the paper trail from there is almost nil.
Right.
That basically the child can be transferred from one to the other. And then there are agencies then that represent the kids and then sell them off basically, and probably promise things like medical bills being paid and that kind of thing for the parent themselves, right?
Yes.
From
what I'm saying, adoption should be your last option. Even if it's going to be a struggle, keep the baby yourself. Rather than get involved in these adoption agencies, or the family member's going to adopt the baby, because I've seen, I even had a friend here in Vegas too, a woman who I dated a long time ago, we're very close, and she had a daughter, and her daughter became addicted to drugs, so they put her daughter's child, this little boy, in a foster home, and the foster family did a murder-suicide, where the father killed himself and he murdered the little girl that was in the crib next to this little boy that my ex-girlfriend's raising right now. And the whole thing's all covered up. No one talks about it. It was in the news, but nothing about what we really know went on. So, yeah, it's these kids are falling through the cracks. And if you look, too, you wonder about this story about this woman in Haiti after the earthquake, and she's involved with the Clintons, and she's bringing all these children out of Haiti through an illegal adoption. They had parents. It all fits into this system. So it doesn't surprise me at all that Trump, that's what they were talking about, because they want that flow of kids opened back up.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And that's, because the Magnitsky Act, that story about the kid being flown home with a letter was one of the reasons that the adoption ban was supposedly signed. But they talk about it as if it was about it was a response to the Magnitsky Act, and he was theoretically meeting an attorney about the Magnitsky Act, and he said he was meeting about adoptions. And I just don't doubt, especially with his modeling agency background. And it's interesting. Haiti comes up over and over and over again. There's that agency that helped with Haitian children, supposedly right on the same block with Comet Ping Pong, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
There is. There's a, I forget what it was called, but it was a agency for helping Haitian kids. And it was right across the street from Comet Ping Pong near some of the other stuff. But Haiti comes up over and over and again. And you just got to think that all these people are connected to Clinton and Trump, and that, Trump has no interest in going after the Clintons in any way, I don't think. I mean, I think you can look at it almost like they're in all this together.
Yeah. Also, I uncovered some stuff recently, too. I kind of put it on the back burner, but I found out that when how the Clintons are totally stealing from Haiti, or any money donated to Haiti has to go to the International Human Rights Commission or Human Relief Commission through Haiti, IHRC, Hillary Rodham Clinton, HRC. Okay, and they're on they run that thing. Okay, and the initials are after her. And all the money has to go through them. So everybody knows about, where'd all that money go? And it was supposed to be building these little houses down there, right? Well, the guy who had the company, who was building these little tiny houses, who was some character, I forget what country, he was like from Venezuela or something like that, had a little computer company in Venezuela, and he totally scammed that company and he stole all the money from that. And somehow he gets in charge of this little house building company that's going to be building these little houses to rescue these Haitian earthquake victims. And also then he's raising all this money. Who's on his board? Jeb Bush, Wesley Clark, and who showed up at one of their big fundraising things before he was president? Barack Obama. Okay, total, and this guy's in prison, but all these other ones on the board are all walking around scot-free, getting elected president, running for president, doing whatever they want. And then again, ties back to Epstein, because Jeb Bush was governor of California during the Epstein trial when the federal prosecutor down there, Acosta, I forget his first name, but his last name's Acosta. He's the one that gave that sweetheart deal to Epstein and chose not to prosecute him federally, and they dropped the case down to the state, and that's how he got 13 months. After this thing all blows over, Trump gives him, he's the head of, I think, Department of Labor or something like that in the Trump administration right now. So Trump isn't trying to bust anybody.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that's what we're learning for sure. But I don't know how long I have you for, but I think I wanted to ask you about, you had, and I was interested, I think I contacted you about it specifically maybe when I asked you if you'd be on the show. You were looking into an SRA investigation that you were going to break something open and fundraising for it and stuff, and you had something to I know you couldn't talk too much about the details, but what's the status of that? If you can say
that's a good question. You know, like I just told you before the air, you know, I just got into a big fight with one of the people involved in it. There's a, you know, it seems that so many of these situations, like even my big case with Sarah Palin and stuff like that, it's the personalities involved with the people, and, you know, and so it's real. You know, I'm not doubting the accuracy of what I'm being told. And there's a name involved in this that's a household name that if I mention it to everybody knows it. And there's even, if everything could just be done correctly, because it involves someone who's on TV all the time, that we could have a lawsuit against them and, you know, and get huge publicity on this thing as well. So it's one of those things where the case could be put together right. I'm not saying I'm a genius and it takes me to do it or whatever, but just we have to cooperate with each other and just not get off on these tangents and distractions and stuff. So it's something I'm going to continue working on. But do I see a lot of hope in anything coming out of it? Honestly, I don't know. You know, like so many other things, man. You know, I could tell you some stuff. There's a lot of stuff I work on that I can't talk about. But, you know, there's been some big stuff that was so close. It could have been done right.
Yeah. Well, it is
just
hard.
Wasn't.
It is hard because I know people, too, who could probably tell me some real stories if they were willing to talk about it or do anything about it. And people change their minds all the time. And, you know, and then there are personality things, too, that can crop up. I know all about that. I have personality conflicts all the time with people. So I get it. Well, I was excited to maybe get something done there, but you never know. If you need any help in California, though, I'm willing to help you out. I think you can trust me.
Okay, we'll definitely talk about that. Yeah.
What do you think? You think you can trust me now after you've been on the show?
Well, I just met you. You know, you seem like a legit guy. David, I kind of trust David Schroeder's instincts, to be honest with you. You know, as far as that kind of thing goes, I think he's a sincere guy. But you know, the guy's he's you know, and you know, he can be annoying too as hell, man. Like he's sending you messages every 5 minutes. You know, like. But I love him, you know. But just I'm kind of happier the way things are now. But I love him, and I trust his judgment on things like this for sure. I'd sent a lot of people over to him to, you know, even though I think he's being slandered right now all over the place, people making kind of crazy accusations. But I think he's a legit guy.
Okay, cool. Well, but as long as you think I might be legit. But anyway,
sure.
I am willing to help you out with anything you need help with in California. I'm trying to change the world as much as I can. So I think we're going in the right direction. I'm going to start trying to reach out. I'm going to do what I can since I'm not a private investigator, just reaching out to people and trying to shed light on this stuff. And you just you just covered a bunch of stuff that people didn't know, and that's going to make a real difference out there. So, because the right people are watching. Did you have anything else that we didn't cover before I let you go?
Well, I would just to encourage you, I'd just tell you, don't be shy, man. You can call up the press office of these police departments, like the numbers on the press release I gave you. You can call them up. They're not going to start vetting you out and say, well, how many listeners you got? How many, They don't do all that. Sometimes, down the road. But you can pretty much call people up, and talk to them. They'll talk to you. And don't be shy about it whatsoever. And email people and asking questions. I was doing that way before I had a radio show or, my whole life I've always done that, just to contact people and say, hey, I want to talk to you. And, you have a way of talking to people. You can do that. I've
been working on it. Well, yeah. I reached out to you, didn't I?
Sure.
That was good. That was a good step. I'm so excited you came on the show.
No, thank you very much.
I think I took you for enough time, but man, my audience was really glad to have you here. I'm probably going to take calls from people who are going to say that it was great. So thanks a lot. I hope, if I have any questions, you don't mind me bugging you once in a while. You're a great guest and you're a good guy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Ed.
Good night.